Welcome to Mommispace. My name is Brianna Bernhard, your hostess, and I am a new mom. I selfishly created this podcast to get some advice and inspiration from the moms in my community who are doing amazing things while raising their families. I've realized motherhood is hard, but knowing I'm not alone in this call makes all the difference, and I hope you feel refreshed as you listen. Welcome to the tribe. Welcome back to Mommispace. This is Bree, and today I have the pleasure of interviewing my mom for Mommispace. Welcome.
Thank you.
I interviewed you for the Thread the Future podcast too, but this one is going to look, actually it was also for your involvement in health and now being a health coach. And but I know that you're passionate about women's health and specifically new moms, young moms, for the health of themselves, but also their kids.
Right.
And so that's primarily the reason I wanted to have you on to talk about all of that. And I know there are a lot of people that could get a lot of really good stuff out of that. So
great.
We'll talk mostly about that. But first, could you share about yourself and maybe a little bit of what motherhood looked like for you when you were a mama? I mean, you still are, but now you're more of a grandma.
I know. And love it. Well, it was both the most wonderful thing and the hardest thing I've probably ever done. And I always wanted to be a mom. So I think a lot of it came naturally. But my husband traveled a lot, and so that was hard. I felt like a single mom a good bit of the time, with the exception that at least I knew he was coming back. I can't imagine how hard that would be. So that was really tough, and I think we'll get into some things about health and caring for yourself, and I think that I didn't do nearly as much of that as I could have and would have been beneficial for me to do. So I wish that I had. So I want to encourage other moms to do that, for sure.
That's cool. So how did you get into pursuing a more healthy lifestyle? Because I know you didn't start off like super healthy person, right?
No.
Like maybe you could share some even of your stories. You have some funny ones.
Gosh. Yeah, I was really, really finicky, and my mom was into health food, and she really tried, but I was stubborn and picky, and they have a joke that they took me to what was called a smorgasbord, which is like a all-you-can-eat buffet. And I went through the line and I picked out Jell-O and carrot sticks. Now, at least I picked out carrot sticks, right? But that just was so typical of me.
Oh my gosh.
And so, I think that played into my health. But by the time I had you, my first child, I was dealing with a lot of fatigue. And I think there were emotional things and other things that played into that as well. But it drove me to start looking at, what could I do? What could I fix or control in my life? And I really felt like it was, there were some divine things that happened that set me up with like an older woman who it was her passion to teach younger women about eating healthy. And so she taught classes and stuff. And she really impacted my life. She has no idea how much she did. We were in Colorado at the time. And so that began my journey. And it was really happenstance that I met her, and again, I feel like it was divine, but it was, a meeting at a health food store. And anyway, that began my journey. But in that journey, there was a lot of confusion because there are so many different opinions in that world. And she recommended this book called What the Bible Says About Healthy Living that brought a lot of balance and peace to the whole subject.
Wow.
And I mentioned that in the other podcast.
Yeah.
So, but it has 3 simple principles that that you can sort of weigh any new thoughts and fads and whatnot by, that is really helpful. And so I don't generally get too caught up in the fads, which is really nice because that can get so crazy and confusing.
Oh, man. Yeah, totally.
So it still is hard sometimes not to get swayed when you hear so much about a certain thing, eating this way or that way. But anyway, that was my journey and how I got into it.
Yeah. So after, 30 plus, almost 30 years of pursuing health on your own and teaching classes at church, helping just different family members and friends with their health, what kind of drove you to get certified as a health coach?
Yeah. I enjoy especially talking one-on-one with people about health, and I want to help people. And so I think it was partially for me to get that formal education, but it was partially for other people. I felt like it would give me some validation to other people.
For sure.
And make a business out of it. What I have just done as a passion and a ministry, really. So I'm, on that journey. I graduated almost a year ago and am, working on that and enjoying the people that I am working with a lot. And I have a real passion for, as you said, moms, and you said young moms, but it's not necessarily, the moms have to be young, but
totally
moms with young kids.
That's right, yeah.
And I believe that's because that's when I got excited about health. And I feel like because of that, it impacted my kids more, and it was easier for my kids to come along on that journey because their palates were not too tainted by the standard American diet.
Totally.
So I have a passion for that. And I know that it would be really, really difficult to go backwards.
Yeah, definitely.
If you hadn't started early, but I still think it's possible.
Yeah. That's really good. Well, and I think, I didn't obviously know any different, but I can just say for myself, it's been so helpful, especially now having Bobby, and I have encountered a lot of fatigue, but I know what to go to, and I mean, it helps that I have you too to ask questions still, but that has been so huge for me. So I would love to kind of have you share maybe a little bit of advice for moms who are feeling kind of stuck, who obviously everybody knows that they need to eat healthy. Like, that's not something that people, don't know. It's the how that we get stuck on.
Absolutely.
And so obviously, we'll add the link to what the Bible says about healthy living. I think that's probably a really good, first resource, wouldn't you say? If you're wanting to research more. Okay.
I think so, because it keeps it real simple.
Yeah.
And it's about what is now called eating clean, which would be eating as close to nature and unprocessed as possible, and eating a lot of live plant foods. And
Cool.
yeah.
Okay. So I guess to keep it kind of short, because I know there's a lot we could go into.
For sure.
What are 3 things that you would
Okay.
encourage moms to pursue when it comes to their own health?
Okay. Well, let me say, first of all, that what I've come to realize is that what you eat is only one small part of the pie, and that there are so many other areas that affect your health, such as your relationships and what you put what your purpose is, what you put your time and energy into, which may be your career, and exercise or movement, because I don't think it has to be extreme. So I that's why I use the word movement, and a spiritual life of some sort. And in my school, they would say, I don't care if you're an atheist, find something bigger than yourself
That's good.
to draw from.
Yeah.
And I thought that was really good.
That's really cool.
So that being said, I would say the first thing that I would encourage people to do, and especially moms where they're drained, it's 24/7, is working self-care into their schedule. And that's something that I didn't do. I mean, really, I was really, really bad about doing that, and didn't understand the importance of it, didn't feel like I could, or didn't have time, or whatever. So that could be taking a bath, that could be getting a babysitter, and just going and spending some time alone. You don't have to go spend money if that's an issue. Go read a book in the park, whatever. But having a break, going for a walk. It can be simple stuff.
Yeah.
But doing something that gives you life that is outside of your kids, I think, is really, really important for your health. And if you're doing well and taking care of yourself, you're going to be better for your child too,
sure.
and have more patience for them.
Yeah.
So the other thing would be to pay attention to the connection between what you eat and how you feel. And that's something that I tried to teach my kids early on, that what they ate, we had the saying that if there was some junk food, I would say it tastes good to your mouth, but not to your tummy. And that was because I wanted to acknowledge that, yes, it does taste good.
Yeah.
I agree. I know it tastes good.
Yeah.
But helping you guys really young connect that it does taste good, but it might not feel good to my body.
Yeah.
So I was not aware of that. I mean, I would eat like crap and couldn't figure out why I felt like crap. Now I'm like, well, I don't understand how I couldn't make that connection. But I think a lot of us don't. And so that is huge. That's like step one, because I would say that was my only motivator in the beginning.
Wow.
And so I would think, I have a real sweet tooth, less today than 20, 30 years ago, but I would literally imagine how I would feel.
Yeah.
And sometimes that was enough motivation and sometimes it wasn't, but it became more and more. The times where it wasn't enough motivation and I still, ate a bunch of cookies or whatever and felt that crappy feeling and the fatigue that I personally would feel, it would be one more incidents that I could remember.
That's so
and
good.
That would motivate me for next time. So that would be the second thing. And the third thing is to eat as close to nature as possible. We don't, it all seems like propaganda sometimes, like eating organic and all of that, eat your fruits and vegetables. But honestly, it doesn't get any more true and any more simple than that. if you look up broccoli, let's say, the benefits of broccoli, it just goes on and on and on. If you look up, Fruit Loops or whatever, there's not going to be any benefits. Oh, so there's so much life in it. And it really does give your body the fuel that it needs and the vitamins and the nutrients and phytonutrients and antioxidants to fight off disease and all sorts of stuff. So
that's so good.
Yeah.
While you were talking about how when you would tell us tastes good to your mouth but not to your tummy, oftentimes that wasn't, and just like you said, isn't always motivation enough.
No, right.
And I was thinking, okay, so how would I have received as a young kid or even a teenager, like what would have made sense to me that would have helped me be more motivated? I don't know that this would actually be true, but I'm feeling it more now. Like I'm feeling the ability to say no easier when I imagine how I'll feel. Sometimes I can actually feel what I'll feel like. It's crazy because your mind's powerful in that way.
I agree.
But just imagining like all of those times that your tummy feels yucky for that time, even if it's just a short amount of time, saying those things compound. So it's not like you're sick. It's not like you're feeling sick for just an hour.
Right.
Even when it goes away, you go to sleep, you wake up in the morning, it's compounded and inside your cells, and those things can add to a bigger sickness and a longer sickness. So even telling your kids like, hey, it tastes good right now, but it'll hurt your tummy, and in the long run, it's going to hurt your tummy for a long time.
Right.
I mean, I don't want there to be like shame or like
I know
fear, obviously, but like I think that helps me see, because I'm like, well, if it's just a temporary, if I can get over an hour, I'll be fine. I'll be fine. And
it's worth it if it's just for an hour.
And I still tell myself that. But anyways. Okay, cool. So I also kind of wanted to ask, because there are ways that we can help ourselves, but then I thought maybe it would be nice to know some practical ways we can help support our kids and their health. So do you have maybe 3 examples of how we could do that?
Yeah, I was thinking about that ahead of time, and what I came to was that ultimately it's the same 3 things that I would encourage anybody to do, but it would look a little bit different. Yeah. So starting with the first one, work self-care into your schedule. For a child, that might be teaching them to have some alone time, and that's going to be different for every kid. For an extrovert kid, that's going to be really difficult. So maybe it's a shorter amount of time. You liked alone time, so I remember when I would do that with you and Josh, that a lot of times I'd say, okay, your playtime, your alone playtime or whatever is done, and you're welcome to come out of your room when you're ready. And a lot of times you would want to stay longer. But that was a part of your schedule. And I needed that too.
Yeah.
But I also believe I believe that children need that.
I totally agree.
And then, gosh, I read this great article, and it was talking about a mom and her son left his favorite stuffed animal in, I think, his grandma's car. His grandma was visiting, and his grandma left, and about an hour later, he realized he left this precious, I mean, he'd never slept without it kind of thing. And I forget, I think he was maybe 4 years old. And the mom could see the terror on his face that he didn't have his precious little bear. And she talked about how she wanted to fix it and say, but you've got this bear or this stuffed animal, and make it better and replace it and all that kind of thing. But she realized she needed to let him feel it. And she said he just fell apart and he fell on the floor and sobbed and sobbed and sobbed. But I think it was for like 10 minutes.
Yeah.
It wasn't actually that long. Now, every kid's different, so it could be much longer. But when he got done feeling that sadness and all, he came to his own conclusion. And I don't remember what that was, but I think it was, I've got these other stuffed animals. Maybe I could sleep with this one tonight. Wow. But it was such a great article. And my temperament is, I want everybody to be happy. Yeah. And I don't want to feel pain, and I don't want you to feel pain.
Yeah.
And so I know that I didn't do so well with that with my kids. I didn't want them to feel pain. And so I reading the story, I knew I would be trying to fix it. And so that's probably why it impacted me.
Sure.
But I thought again of that example when I was thinking about ways to teach a child self-care.
Yeah.
That is a great lesson to learn early in life.
Yeah.
And so that was another example that I thought
huge.
Of for self-care.
I love that. It made me think of, what's that Disney Pixar movie?
Oh, Inside Out?
Inside Out, yes.
Like that?
Brandon and I just watched it the other night together, and I had seen it, but he hadn't seen it, and he was talking about how he had heard about this one scene that was so impactful, and he was interested to see it, and it had to do with like feeling the emotion in the moment, not trying to like push it down, not trying to push it away. And I think there, anyways, that would be a cool thing for as a mom to show your kids if you're able to show them. It's such a powerful scene where this made up character of the girl is being forgotten, and that means he's going to disappear because it's in her brain or whatever. And one of the little other people, I don't even know how to explain it. This little creature sits with the imaginary friend while he cries about being forgotten. And she's like, I'm so sorry. That's really sad. That must hurt really bad. And then he stops crying, and they get up and they continue on their way. I just thought that was so powerful. That's like a really cool tool.
Well, and we and our children are all going to have sadness in our life. Yeah. We're going to have things to grieve.
Yeah. And
so what a great lesson to teach them early on, that it's good and healthy to grieve.
Totally.
And that helps you get on the other side of it.
I know. I remembered kind of what I thought about that in addition to that scene was that when I first had Bobby and I was reading different books and trying to figure out like what kind of methods, obviously this is going to be different for like an infant than with a toddler or a young child. But there's such a stigma against like letting a child cry, that I think can be really detrimental in the long run when we're talking about this kind of thing. So I think that's a really great point.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you might hear some family noises in the background. The baby is awake.
My precious grandchild. So self-care, and then to begin to teach your children about the connection between what they eat and how they feel. And I wrote a couple thoughts down. Start looking for other ways to reward kids besides food.
That's really good.
Which isn't necessarily about that connection that I just said, but that was another note. It's really easy to somebody's sad or they fall down and get hurt or whatever, and to want to fix it with, here's some candy.
I know.
That will quickly change their mood temporarily.
Well, and it does in your brain. There's an actual chemical reaction that happens with food, which makes sense. We've been so programmed to do that.
Yeah. And then it's really hard to unprogram that. So we find ourselves, I'm in my 50s and I recently went through some difficult stuff with my dad. He had fallen and whatnot, and I went to Trader Joe's, my favorite store, after I had been with him, and it had been a hard week, and I was so aware, because I don't feel like I'm a super emotional eater.
Yeah, no.
Very often, but anyway, I was so aware that I wanted all things not healthy.
Yeah.
There are a lot of healthy things at Trader Joe's.
Yeah.
I wanted all the things that weren't healthy, and
Yeah.
there's plenty of those too.
Yeah.
And oh man, but I was aware of it, and I chose something on the healthier end of that,
Yeah.
like some chocolate covered almonds or something like that, opposed to some of the other things.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying it's, I think it's important to be moderate. Otherwise,
Yeah.
you kind of go
Yeah.
crazy. So I'm not saying you can't
Yeah.
ever
No, totally.
do that, but I think it is helpful to be aware
Yeah.
of it.
Yeah.
And then the other thing with kids, the third thing, which was the same for you and I, is to feed them as close to nature as possible, which I know is so challenging because there's so many processed foods and, of course, fast foods, packaged foods that make life easier, that are really, really detrimental to our health
Yeah.
long term.
Yeah.
Too, not just in the moment. You might not even feel it in the moment. And I can't stress enough cutting back on sugar, which is a really tough one, I know, with kids. It really wreaks havoc on your immune system. And summertime is a great time to try and do that, because there are so many great fruits that are naturally sweet and can satisfy some of that craving. And I would say, if you can, splurge on some of those things.
That's good.
Take your kid to the farmer's market where you're getting really good, flavorful stuff that is freshly picked, and so it has more nutrients.
Yeah.
And let them try some new things.
That's really good.
And a lot of times they'll have tasters there, and so they can taste the blueberries and the raspberries and see if they like them, and
peaches.
Yeah.
You're right. There's so many good things.
Yeah. And I would say sometimes it is a splurge to buy those things, but it's so worth the splurge.
Yeah, and I mean, if you think about it, like if you're used to buying a sweet treat or something, it probably will it would probably be around the same amount in the long run anyways too.
Yeah, there's a good chance of that.
But yeah, that's really good. Another thing that came to mind, some advice I heard somewhere, I don't remember, it's probably on another podcast, but it was about if you are craving like some kind of sugary thing or to make it yourself, because then there's more that goes into it. Like maybe that will help, almost like, oh, it's too much work, I guess I'll just pass with a banana, or I don't want to put that much effort in. But if you do, then you can look up different ways to make it healthier, and then it still maybe satisfies some of that. I do that all the time.
Absolutely. And just on that note, I think that you can make most of your recipes, whether they're your favorite dinners or desserts, there's a lot you can do to make them healthier. The ingredients, buying as many organic ingredients as possible. There's a group called the Environmental Working Group. They go by EWG, and they put out a list that's called the Dirty Dozen every year, and they redo it every year, and they test lots and lots of fruits and vegetables to see which ones have the most pesticides. And we're not talking they don't spray it just once. They sometimes spray 50 different chemicals because there's herbicides and pesticides.
Jeepers.
And there's a lot more that goes into the whole organic gardening that people sometimes are aware of.
Yeah.
And so if you want to try and start buying some of your food organic, if you haven't done that, I would encourage you to look up the Environmental Working Group, or you can just put the Dirty Dozen.
Okay.
They also make a list called the Clean 15 that are the least contaminated. And so it's nice to know. And so I try to buy organic stuff. Any of the items on the Dirty Dozen, I try to buy organic.
Okay.
There's times like this week I bought cherries, and they're on the Dirty Dozen, but the organic ones were so expensive, and the other ones were on sale for 99 cents a pound or something crazy like that. So you have to, weigh it out and buy as much organic as you can, and then look at the Clean 15 and don't worry about those ones as much.
That's good.
Yeah.
And I'll add those links for people who are,
great.
if you're wanting to know what those are, I'll add links to the show notes so you can just click on those from this podcast episode, screenshot them and save them. And also I spoke to another mama early on who is also really a young mom who's passionate about health and is just getting into it. And she often will show on her Instagram, like, she goes and shops at Sprouts and shows like all of the fruits and vegetables she got for like under $100, like just a ton of stuff.
Yeah.
So there are ways that you can do it, like on certain sale days where it's less expensive. But then I also love, you have said before too, like if there are only apples that aren't organic or some kind of fruit or vegetable that aren't organic, and you are wondering whether you should get them or not because they're on the Dirty Dozen, it's probably just best to get them, right? Like, what do you say?
Yeah, absolutely. It's better to have an apple, even if it's commercially grown, than to have none.
Yeah.
So
your body's going to pull the nutrients that needs from it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. That's good. It's really good. Well, thanks, Mom.
Yeah.
This is really fun. And I'm sure we'll have some people who are probably interested in hearing more, getting in contact with you. Is it okay if we give your email or?
Absolutely.
And you're on Instagram too, so
yes,
we'll tag you.
Yeah, I would love that.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for tuning into this week's episode. I hope you enjoyed it. It was such a pleasure to have you listen in. If you'd like more information about this guest and other guests, you can check that out on Facebook and Instagram at Mommispace. And you can also email me at mommispace@gmail.com if you want more details or have any questions or would just like to get in touch. I'm always looking for new connections. Also, it would mean so much if you could leave us either a rating or review or both on iTunes. This just gets the word out about the show. It's a way that we can get more connected with more mamas out there. And it really helps me out as I am doing this on my own. And sometimes I just need a little lift up, y'all. It's good to hear from you that way. Thank you so much again for tuning in. I hope you have an amazing week. Remember, you are loved, you are enough, and you are doing your very best. See you next week, Mama.